Hi, I'm Lisa Bauman, host of Let's Talk Careers. In this episode, we meet Camelia Nunez, profpreneur here in the Entrepreneurship and Innovation program at Conestoga College. Camelia shares her journey from linguistics to entrepreneurship. In our conversation, she shares how curiosity and people are keys to successful startups. I hope you enjoy. So welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm going to get you to start by introducing yourself, and then you can say your current role and something you're really passionate about.
Well, thanks for having me, Lisa. This is exciting. My name's Camelia Nunez. I am a faculty member in the School of Business and the program coordinator for the Entrepreneurship and Innovation program. A passion of mine, I would say, is education, but specifically more so entrepreneurship education. So yeah, it's very fitting that I am where I am.
Yeah, that is perfect. I'm going to get you to kind of go way back now. Okay. So we start back from when, like the beginning, right? But not when you were born, but the beginning. Mm-hmm. What was your first sort of paid job as a young person, or even, maybe as you graduated post-secondary or went in high school or something like that? What was your first paid job?
Well, that's an interesting question because I was born and raised in Romania. So in Romania, teenagers don't work. There's just no jobs, or back when I was there. I've been here 25 years, so things may have changed. But when I was a teenager in Romania, I came here at 17. Young people didn't work. Teenagers, they just weren't part-time jobs. It wasn't a cultural thing. So my dad had been in Canada for a while, and I had stayed back with my mom. She decided not to come. So then when I came here, I was in grade 12.
Okay.
And I really wanted to work because I was here in high school in Kitchener, and a lot of the people in my class, my new friends, they were working, and I said, I want to work. So anyway, one of the friends helped me get a job, and I worked at this coffee shop. It's called Country Style.
Nice.
And I had the Sunday morning shift. It started at 6 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Perfect.
And as a teenager, that's rough because Saturdays you kind of want to go out with
Have
friends.
some fun. Yeah.
But I had to be there at 6 a.m. every Sunday, and my first job was to clean the washroom. Anyway, I said the whole Romania thing because when I told that to my mom, who had stayed back, that did not go by well. It was just, my whole family back home was very offended, and my dad would put me to work. So yeah, there was a bit of a, I don't know. I guess I went against the grain with that job, but you know what? I loved it. I worked, grade 11 and 12, grade 12 and grade 13 that you would have to do at the time. And I think I worked a bit at the beginning of university, but then I got some other job at the mall.
Yeah. Where did you go to university?
I went to University of Waterloo.
Okay. What did you take?
I studied Spanish and French, and I did a specialization in translation.
That's amazing.
I wanted to be a Spanish teacher at first. Then I went for prof. Then I totally changed.
Wow. So tell me more. What do you mean when you totally changed? What did you do?
Well, so I was doing a PhD in linguistics. Well, actually, let me just back up a little bit because so I always, as a child, I always thought I was going to be a teacher. This was my favorite game. I had all my stuffies aligned on my couch.
I did the exact same thing. That's amazing.
Yeah, so I was like, no, I would have these lessons with my stuffies. And anyway, so I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. And then when I was in, and I always had a thing for languages. Long story, I come from, my parents come from two linguistic backgrounds. So I spoke two languages as a first language, I guess. So after, I don't know if that's what prompted my kind of inclination towards language learning, but I always had a thing for languages. And I speak 7.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah.
It's exciting because I can talk to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I love Spanish. I actually taught myself Spanish by watching soap operas in Romania with subtitles in Romanian. So anyway, I decided that I love Spanish so much and the culture and everything. Cultures, I should say, because there's lots of countries that speak Spanish. Anyway, so I wanted to study that. And I mean, French is something that I had studied in Romania as well. And I guess, in Canada, French is the second language. So I just kind of went with those two. I majored in Spanish though, so I wanted to be a Spanish teacher. It so happened that my high school teacher was kind enough to let me volunteer in her classroom while I was doing my undergrad, and I really didn't like it. I didn't like to be a high school teacher. I didn't really like to, through that volunteering experience, I definitely learned that I didn't want to be in high school. I don't know, too much going on. I couldn't really handle it. Although it was fun. I mean, she was a fun teacher. I enjoyed her classes, but it wasn't for me. And I wasn't going to teach young kids. So, and then I had become very intrigued by the language learning process itself, because I was kind of like I said, I always had an interest in languages. And then here, there's a lot of people speaking different languages. And in Europe, I mean, I don't want to say everyone because I don't want to generalize, but it's pretty common that people speak 2-3 languages, right? So I kind of became more interested in sort of what happens like cognitively, like in our minds. And so, those kinds of questions lead to grad school. And so I did a master's and I did a PhD in Hispanic linguistics. So yeah, that's where I was headed. And then during my PhD, after my third year, so yeah, I had done my comps, everything. I was working on my dissertation. I had gone to do my field research. I actually did my field research back in Romania and in Serbia. So I was studying, I'm half Croatian, so the languages are similar. So anyway, I went to study the language acquisition process. And anyway, so I was on my way to graduating and whatnot. And in a turn of events, I met this researcher from Spain. He was a prof in computer science, and he was building some cool technology. This was, what year would have been? Maybe 2008, 2009. Okay. Yeah. Yes, because my son was a baby. 2000. Actually, no, sorry. I started my master's in 2008. It probably would have been maybe 2011 when I met this person. And he was working on this cool technology that now it's pretty normal, but back then it was kind of the cool thing where you can interact with the technology. It was an AI, sort of machine learning based thing. Okay. And he was using it, I think it was a doctor's office where you could like book an appointment with this virtual person. So anyway, we were just talking, and given my background in language acquisition, I was like, this would be so cool if we could use it for language learners, because, for my research and just the stuff that I was studying, it was one of the biggest reasons why adults are not successful at learning a second language, or let's say much less successful than children, is because a lack of opportunities to communicate in that language. So I thought, wow, this would be cool if we could like have an on-demand kind of conversation partner and whatnot. So yeah, you get these ideas and then you start to become obsessive about it. You're like, oh, how can we do this? And so we ended up starting a startup.
Okay.
So
what is the startup?
So hey, it's a crazy career path. Let me tell you. This is why I never judge.
I love it.
You do. I always tell my kids, my career path is based on curiosity. So
I love that.
Whatever I was curious about, I just followed that. Yeah. But always kind of true to the one thing, which was like learning and Anyway, so
what's the startup though? I'm hanging ready to know.
It was an on-demand learning partner or conversation partner for people learning Spanish. Spanish. We had started with Spanish because that's kind of what I was studying, but the goal was to make it available for other languages. And So, of course, I have no idea. So this was obviously very researchy subject. So we were going to commercialize this. Yeah, I had no idea how to do that. So then I knew that there was a master's program at UW. It's the MBET program. So in that program, you were allowed to come with a business idea, and if it got accepted as part of your application process, you would be allowed to work on that business idea. It's called a practicum. So it's part of the academic requirement to work on a practicum, and that practicum can be your own, and then you could work on it with students in the program. So, I wrote a proposal and I applied. Did I say I had 2 kids at this time? So it was just a big career change there. So anyway, so there I am applying for this program. I actually really lucked out because it was the 10-year anniversary of the MBET degree, and they were giving out these scholarships. So I pretty much had a full scholarship, and they liked my business idea. So they let me work on it during the MBET program.
Wow. What year was this?
So that would have been 2012, 2013, because I graduated in 2013.
And how old were the kiddos at the time?
Well, one was 4.
Okay.
4. He's born in 2008. So 4. And the other one was 6. Yeah. They were little. I have this photo of the 2 of them and I at my MBAC graduation. They're so little. Anyway, I love that photo. Anyhow, so I was working on this idea, and that's kind of how I got introduced to like the world of entrepreneurship.
Okay. So you worked on your business idea through the MBET program. Did you launch the business?
Yes. So
what's the name of the business?
It's called Milau language.
Okay.
So Milau means to chat or to speak in Greek.
Okay.
And the reason why we came up with that is because one of my classmates, and who ended up being on our Milau team, it was Greek. So she's like, I was like, that sounds cool. Yes. So let's call it that. So anyway, it was so I worked on that for about 3.5 years, I think, after I graduated from MBET. So I had taken a leave of absence from my PhD, and the goal was to go back. But then the business idea was getting traction, and I was able to raise some money, and mostly government grants, not VC or anything like that. But we had raised, I think we were close to 350. So it was good. We had a pretty solid prototype. We were using it in a few schools, just like testing it, and so I wanted to continue learning and working on this after my MBET, right? So the MBET was a fantastic introduction to just the network, and I didn't even know about Communitech and just fundraising and VCs and, Series A, Series B, not to mention all the government funding that was available for this. So it was a great introduction. And then we ended up in the Accelerator Center after I graduated from MBET. 2 of my team members were on there.
Okay.
Continued working with me, and so we kind of did that.
What did you do at the Accelerator Center, though? Tell me.
So the Accelerator Center, we applied to get access to an office in there. So we just worked out of there with some of the other companies. Through them, we also got access to some funding that they were handling at the time. So it was really helpful to continue to be embedded in the ecosystem.
Right. So what happens after that? So you launch this business?
Yeah. So like I said, I worked on it for about 3.5 years. I think the idea was great. The technology was too early for what we were trying to do. It was glitchy, so it wasn't. It turns out that it's really hard to have to teach a second language with AI and machine learning because its response depends a lot on the learner's background.
Right.
Like, a person who has a first language as say Mandarin will make very different mistakes.
Right.
and trying to learn Spanish will make very different mistakes from someone that speaks English and is trying to learn Spanish versus or someone that speaks Romanian and is trying. So it was just I think it's, we were a bit too early. I'm not even sure, even now, like if you talk to some of these AI or you try to kind of interact with them, they're not that smart yet. Like they're still, like if you have an accent, they like Google sometimes doesn't understand my parents or, they have an accent. So it's just confused half the time. Yeah. So anyway, so I had 2 kids and I couldn't live the startup life anymore. So with that, I transitioned into working for one of the funders that I had become familiar with. So I worked for MyTax for a while.
Okay. What did you do there?
So MyTax is an organization that basically, they do a bunch of things. Now they've grown, but at the time, the main sort of bread and butter was supporting grad students with funding to do internships in organizations. So giving them that experience outside of academia. So if you're a PhD student or a master student, just kind of giving you that opportunity to work.
That's a cool job.
Is really cool because that was me.
Yeah.
So again, it was, I don't know, I learned a lot during my startup process, and one of the things that I learned that also was very shocking to me was that there was so much funding available. So many different groups were supporting this type of like innovation. And so coming from Romania, to me, this was like, what? Yeah. Why would the government give you money to like start a business? And so I became very curious and very intrigued about this. And having the chance to work for MyTax was kind of a win-win-win all around because I was a grad student that ended up doing something outside of academia. And then, I had sort of applied for a bunch of different funding through the startup. So it was a great way for me to get entrenched in that field. And that's kind of how the whole startup era came to an end. I mean, I started another business right after.
What was that business? I need to know. She laughs.
I am an entrepreneur at heart, and I didn't know. Okay,
you didn't know.
I just have this need to build things and do things, and
that's amazing. What's the new business? What's the next business?
So the next business was. It was a seasonal business, you'd call it. It was a summer business. So through the whole, like Spanish and all this stuff, like I built a lot of connections with people in all over the Spanish-speaking countries. So one good relationship that came out of it was in Mexico. And anyway, they were working at this high school. That's one of the big private high schools in Mexico. And they wanted to have a program for high school students coming here. So I started that. I was like, okay, well, if there is a demand, let's do this. I worked with my network here. We set up a program. So every summer, we'd bring 50 to 60 high school students for a month. They would stay here in Canada to learn English, and we do a bunch of trips. We went all the way to Quebec and Montreal and Ottawa. So it was a summer exchange program. So I did that until COVID hit, and then nobody could come anymore. So that was my next business.
Okay. So what do you do after this?
So this was my side gig because it was just a summer. So I was working on MyTax when this whole thing was happening. And then I then transitioned into research partnerships at UW and ultimately ended up at Velocity, which is the startup incubator for the University of Waterloo. And there, it was just a phenomenal job. I had so much fun with it.
Yeah, what was the job?
So the job was essentially supporting entrepreneurs from student aspirers to entrepreneurship, let's say, to, full on entrepreneurs, people working on their company's early stage. It's a very early stage incubator. So it was it was really awesome to, get to use some of my experience towards that job, but also learn so much more stuff and different industries, different types of businesses. So it was a fun job. So, it kept me in that entrepreneurial ecosystem as well. So that was great.
How long were you there for?
About 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So
what did you do after Velocity?
So after Velocity, I went to work back on campus.
This campus?
At UW.
UW. Okay.
So I worked at UW a long time.
Yeah.
So I went and worked. So the Faculty of Mathematics at UW was starting an Office of Innovation. And, I had a few conversations, and it turned out that they wanted me to go and sort of help set up this innovation office. And part of the focus was research partnership, but the other focus was supporting entrepreneurship for undergraduate, graduate, faculty. So coming from that background, it was a really cool job too. Yeah. I think you can probably get this from this conversation. I love starting stuff, right? I love shaking the boat
and seeing what happens.
That's so amazing. It was a great job. For a bit, I wasn't there for too long, but it was great getting sort of the structure of the office in place, and getting it off the ground, and just kind of seeing it happen, like hiring a couple of people. So it was nice.
Yeah. Let me pause and just ask a question here, because you kind of say this. You just had this conversation and then it happened. And I'm like, there's more detail there. And I need to know, because the thing is that somebody wants to also know how to replicate this, right? So tell me more about what you mean. You have this conversation and all of a sudden you're starting up another innovation office for math. Just more detail. What happened? How did all that come into play?
Yeah, I mean, this is a hard question to answer, because there's a lot of little elements, and I try to kind of explain this to my students too. Every job that you do is an opportunity for you to learn, meet new people, and showcase your talents.
Yes. So how do you do that?
By doing a good job. Okay. Number one, right? Like having a good work ethic. Yes. Trying your best, right? It doesn't mean not making mistakes, or it doesn't mean you're perfect or anything, but just simply trying to give it your best, trying to have a good attitude, and let your work speak for yourself and your attitude. Attitude is a big one. It's so big. It doesn't get talked about enough, but it's so big. Like the quality of your work must speak for yourself and your attitude too. And take the time to talk to people, ask questions, see what's going on around you, what people are doing. I think it's so important to go and be curious. Again, like this whole curiosity
I was going to
thing.
say, I was just thinking the exact same thing, is letting your curiosity say, well, how did you do that? And what does that mean? And what does that look like? And just asking those questions.
Yeah. So when I was at Velocity, for example, for this specific example, a lot of the student entrepreneurs and a lot of the founders that end up in the incubator tend to come from engineering. But in the Faculty of Math, they also have, there's a lot of really smart students that there's the School of Computer Science also is a part of Faculty of Math. So we probably would get, I don't know the numbers exactly, but a lot less than engineering students from math and computer science. So, but when we would get them, they were awesome ideas, great students. These are super smart young people. So, I had noticed this. So, I was proactively trying to communicate with math to be like, okay, how can, we motivate more students from your faculty? So, I was genuinely trying to make our programs more available to math, not just to math, also arts. I mean, I'm an arts graduate, so I wanted more arts student to participate in our velocity programs. And so, and they did. I mean, it worked when you genuinely try to help people and you make it clear that you want to help and you want to work with them to support their students. They'll be grateful and they'll be excited to work with you, right? So, so that's kind of how I established this relationship. I didn't even know this job was going to exist 3-4 years down the road. Like it wasn't, I wasn't doing it because I was hoping that one day I would start an innovation office in math. Like that wasn't even on the table. I was just genuinely trying to do what was right for entrepreneurship on campus and among students. And that's sort of how I guess people knew me and they kind of had that relationship with me, which of course makes it a lot more easier to interview and have, sometimes get a job offer.
Yes. Yeah.
Had I been a flake.
Yes. No, I understand.
Or not done what I need to do, then maybe they wouldn't have hired me,
Yes, exactly.
So I think just back to your question, I think just do a good job and genuinely try to help people with a good attitude and ask questions, talk to people, and things happen. People are the key to everything, right?
Yes, they are. 100%, they are the key. Okay, so you're working on this innovation through the School of Math at UW. What happens next?
Well, then I have a midlife crisis.
Oh, no. Or yes. I don't know. Maybe yes.
Yeah, yes. No, I do. I decide that, you know what, I don't want to do this job anymore. I want to sort of try something completely different. It was a good job. Like I love UW. I love my experience there. I mean, I'm an alumni. I feel like I never left kind of thing. Except for my grad school that was at Western. Anyway, so point is that I kind of decided, you know what, I want to do something else. So you know what I did? I joined a startup.
You joined a startup. She wants to do something different, so she joins a startup.
Yep. So I shook up my life because, too much security is not cool.
Okay.
Yeah, my family was like, "Are you serious? You're giving up a well-paying job with a pension and all kind
to join a startup."
To join a startup. So I joined the startup.
What's the startup?
Well, it's called Van Hack.
Okay.
So the founder is based from Vancouver. It's global though. It's global and it was fully remote. So it was a challenge. It was interesting. So I just kind of wanted to give my head a shake to do something different. Yeah. Wait till you hear what happens. Anyhow, so I joined the startup. Again, it was through mutual connections that knew the CEO. So it was more like a conversation, and then I applied, and then it ended up working out.
Okay.
For 8 months.
What did you?
I got laid off.
So what was the product of this company? What was the service of this company?
Oh my God. So the crazy stories. So this company actually was the reason why I wanted to join them was because again, it kind of suited my own personal interests. So what they did was they were helping hire technical talent from around the world for Canadian and American and European companies. Okay. So basically, it was a platform where so on the one hand, we worked with companies that would post their jobs on our platform. And then on the sort of the other arm of the business was working with people literally everywhere in the world. We had a team that was teaching them how to, be professional for like North American or European sort of standards, how to interview, how to prepare for these kinds of things. So there were people from different countries in Africa, India, Latin America. So it was a really cool. It was a really, really cool
But you got laid
company. And then all of a sudden, after, I don't know, COVID, things weren't going well. So when I got laid off, about a third of the company got laid off. So yeah, we were about, I think, 110 people when I joined. And then a lot of people got laid off. And then another sort of layer of layoffs happened. I mean, you know what? I don't regret it. Whatever. I mean, it's crazy because I didn't expect it to happen so soon, but it did. And I mean, it just goes to show that sometimes when you take a risk or make a decision, there's no guarantees, right?
Yeah.
So
what do? You're laid off.
Yeah.
And you're like, what the heck happened?
Yeah. Well, so one thing that I didn't mention is that throughout all of these things that I've been telling you, I was also always teaching part-time.
Okay.
I always taught a course or two, mostly at UW. So yeah, I was still teaching. Actually, at the time, I was also teaching at Conestoga part-time. Okay. I was teaching at the Waterloo campus. So basically, I got laid off from that job, but I had my teaching. So, I mean, as you know, it's not a crazy income, but it's something, right? So I mean, this just kind of goes to show that diversity of revenue streams is very important, especially today in this day and age.
Yeah,
so
that's a whole other podcast.
That's a whole other podcast. So that allowed me to kind of, honestly, I took a couple of months kind of off to figure out what I wanted to do. I was still in this midlife crisis. It didn't only last 8 months. It took a while. And then, I moved on to the next thing.
What was the next thing?
So the next thing, it was a temporary thing, and I knew that. I joined the Scale Up program in the Lazaretti School of Business.
Yep.
So
that's Laurier.
Yeah.
Yeah, Laurier.
So with this, I wrap up the
trifecta of schools. Gotcha.
So I can officially say I worked at all three post-secondary institutions in town, which actually has its benefits.
Yes.
But anyway, so I worked in the Scale Up program for a bit. That was temporary. I wasn't there for too long, maybe about 10 months. And it was great. I mean, I knew the people there. Van Hack was actually, the startup that I was working for was actually a graduate of their cohort. Okay. So, I was familiar with the people. It was, things changed there. The Scale Up program turned into something else. So, but for me, that was a good time to also kind of think about what I wanted to do. Yeah. And by this time I'm, in my 40s, and I'm kind of like, okay, well, let's see what I want to do. I had this teaching background that I always enjoyed. I always wanted to be a teacher, and I have this like entrepreneurial sort of thing that I keep doing. And then I also worked in administration, right, at the university. So it was kind of like, okay, what do I want to do from now on? And I decided that I want to probably focus on teaching. Okay. For many reasons. But so then at the time, this role came up, and this is a brand new program at Conestoga. Yep. The entrepreneurship and innovation. And I mean, I just read through the description, and it was just kind of like, you know what? I have to go for this. It's got my name on it, and it worked out. And here I am. It's been just over a year, and I couldn't be happier with my decision. I think it's super. It's kind of like a closing to all my adventures so far. I don't know what, I don't want to say that I probably will start another business, but who knows? We'll see. But I do love what I do, and I do love the opportunity. I see it as a startup, this program, because it's new.
It is new.
So there's so much opportunity to do cool things with it. So
Yeah.
I get my entrepreneurship fix too.
That way as well. As well. Along the way, because you've done lots of different things and you've met these different people, have you found like mentors or people who can kind of help guide through some of the decisions that you've gone through?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I don't think anyone can do anything alone. At every point of my life, there was always someone that somehow made a difference, or so. Definitely these people were there. Maybe, in the moment, maybe you don't consider them mentors, but and others you seek actively as mentors, right? But definitely, like for example, when I went to do my MBET program, like I said, I had 2 kids, this is a full-time, 1 year intense graduate degree, right? So the director at the time of the MBET program, he got me, he understood my situation, and he offered me an RA-ship, so that, he would help me financially a little bit. And I was obviously very grateful to him at the time, because it was a very welcome job additional to what I was doing. But now that I look back, it's like, wow, he's actually made it possible for me to be able to do all these other things. And so, and we're still in touch and everything. So he's actually a pretty active in the entrepreneurship education research field. So he continues to be someone I admire and look up to. So check in once in a while. So, that's one person. And when I worked at Velocity, the director of Velocity, I was the associate director, and the director, he was just awesome. And now we're good friends, but he's just like the entrepreneur, through and through. So he's always been an inspiration to me, and kind of like, what, just go for it, just do it, try it. No, you can find a solution. Let's see. So yes, absolutely. I think that it's very important to look for these people. And learn from them. It requires humility. Sometimes people, I don't know, sometimes we don't have that humility, or we're too embarrassed to admit that we need help or guidance. There's a saying that I like: none of us is as good as all of us. And I really do live by that. I think that you do need other people. Like I said earlier, people move the world. Like you need people. Find your people, find your examples, learn from their paths. Sometimes they don't even need to be actively, like sometimes when you say mentors, people think like, okay, we meet up once a week and you tell me and I tell you.
Yeah.
That's not,
Exactly.
Mentors can be in so many different ways. Yeah. Just, finding someone that has a cool career or a cool job that you think, wow, how do they get there? And like kind of looking at their LinkedIn and understanding their path and seeing how they got there. Yeah. Just things like that. I mean, absolutely.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about sort of the early AI connection with your first business. Mm-hmm. What have you noticed now as AI has hit an evolution, and also in your role as an entrepreneur? Where do you see that going? Where do you see some of these things going?
I mean, I think it's definitely come a long way from when we were using that type of technology in our product. I think AI, I mean, it's part of our lives. I mean, I use it. I use it in different ways.
How do you use it?
Well, I use it for ideas, for example, right? Like, for example, I don't know, like if I want to do like a cool classroom activity based on something, I ask, hey, do you have any ideas? The other day I was Googling, I'm like, hey, here's my background. Can you give me some business ideas?
Nice.
What can I start?
And it came up with some suggestions?
Yeah, it came up with some cool ideas. Cool. I don't know, I don't want to say like a friend, but it's someone to kind of bounce ideas off of someone. a thing to bask. I use it that way. I don't know. My husband the other day was just telling me that we have like a little gym in the basement. So he went and he asked ChatGPT he took photos of some of the equipment we had and uploaded it and asked the ChatGPT to create a workout routine for half an hour. And it did.
That's amazing.
So, I mean, I think it's great.
Yeah.
You don't have to sit there and Google it and find, like, it just gives it to you right away and it's specific to what you have. I think I was just thinking about this the other day because, there's this constant battle with students and academic offenses, which, I'm not a fan of replacing your brain with AI, but I do think that the way that I'm understanding AI right now, and I could be totally wrong, I think the difference is going to be in how smart are the questions that you're asking this AI.
Yes.
Right. So it's still going to be you.
Yes.
Asking smart questions was always important.
Yep.
But I think now it's going to be even more important because the uniqueness is going to still come from you. The uniqueness of the answer is going to come from your questions. So if you're going to, I think you have to try to be extra creative and extra thoughtful of how you use it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
What gives you hope for the future?
What gives me hope for the future? Yeah. My kids and their friends and everybody that is always at my house.
That's awesome.
I'm a parent. I'm a mom. I have 3 kids. So I have a little girl now after the 2 boys. So I see them and, it's easy to sometimes judge and be like, oh, they spent so much time on their phones. And I mean, that's a real concern that I myself have as well. But you know what? They have a good head on their shoulders too. Like they're kinder. They're better at saying no. They're better at saying, I need a break. They're better at just the kind thing. Like, they're just kinder to each other. Of course, they're kids. But I have a son who's now 19, or almost 19. He's very excited. We're counting the days.
Nice.
And then one who's 16, so grade 11. And my daughter, she's 8. And I think, they're very thoughtful of the world in bigger terms and they think about things that we didn't think about, right? So they're more conscientious about how they use and abuse the environment, for example, and things like that. So I am hopeful. I am hopeful. I mean, sure, they're young and there's a maturity level that needs to settle in, but I think that they give me hope. I think they're going to build a better world for us, a kinder, less hectic, crazy, or that's maybe just me being positive, which I usually try to be.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Wow, what a great conversation. Thank you for listening to this episode of Let's Talk Careers. If you liked this episode and want to hear more, follow us on Spotify and subscribe on YouTube. See you in the next one.